In 1931, Illinois made it a crime to sell, own, carry, or transport a machine gun. Then, in the same act, the legislature listed the men it did not mean: sheriffs, constables, the National Guard, and then this, in the statute's own words: guards or messengers employed by common carriers, banks and trust companies, and payroll guards or messengers. The man riding the payroll truck was not an oversight. He was written into the law on purpose. Number 3 is the gun everyone believes was built for him, and the company that made it spent the next 11 years advertising it as a hunting arm. Number 1 was illegal across most of the country by 1933, and the guard on the coal run could still buy one over a hardware store counter. These are 25 weapons that armored car guards, express messengers, and payroll men carried when the other side had Thompsons. Hit subscribe, because this list gets stranger the closer we get to number 1. Let's count them down. Number 25, the shotgun on the buggy floor. Before armored cars existed, a large American payroll traveled wrapped in newspaper under the seat of an ordinary horse buggy, with a sawed-off shotgun on the floorboards by the driver's boots. That was the whole security system. On August 28, 1917 in Chicago, Express Paymaster B.O. Allen and his assistant Louis Osenberg were killed defending a payroll of $8,776. Brinks began experimenting with light armored cars that same year. No statute in America had a word to say about it. The door was not written yet. It was standing open. Number 24, the Colt Police Positive Special. Nobody makes a film about this one. A 6-shot double-action revolver in .38 Special, light enough to wear all day. The Positive line and Colt's official police between them took most of the American law enforcement market, and the private guard market followed the departments. It belongs here because it is what the average messenger actually had on his hip, not what the catalog photographs promised. And when Congress drew its line in 1934, revolvers were carved out of the definition by name. Number 23, the Colt Official Police. Introduced in 1927 and named with total commercial honesty, this was the service-grade 6-shooter that armed police departments, prison systems, and private protection companies through the gangster decade. Heavier frame than the Positive, chambered for the same .38 Special cartridge that the entire top 5 of this list exists to apologize for. The official police is the baseline. Everything above it is a response to something it could not do. And like every revolver here, it lived its whole career on the safe side of the statute. Number 22, the Colt Government Model in .45 ACP. 7 rounds, the same pistol the American Army had carried since 1911. In the cab of a payroll truck, it was the heavy option, the thing you reached for when the revolver on your belt was not enough. Dallas County Deputy Ted Hinton carried 2 into the ambush that ended Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow in May 1934. And note what that meant legally. A pistol was a pistol. Congress exempted it in writing that same year, and it has never stopped being exempt since. Number 21, the Colt Detective Special. First series, produced from 1927 to 1946, built around a single idea: 2 inches of barrel, 6 shots, 21 ounces. It was designed to vanish under a coat, which is what a bank messenger walking a satchel across a lobby needed. And it is the cleanest illustration of this list. 2 inches on a revolver was perfectly legal in 1934. 18 inches on a shotgun was a federal felony. The law was not measuring what a weapon could do, it was measuring what shape it was. Number 20, the Fit Special. Not a factory model, a modification. Colt's traveling representative, J.H. Fitzgerald, cut down large frame revolvers into something faster out of a coat pocket. Barrel shortened, hammer spur bobbed, butt rounded. The front of the trigger guard cut away. Guards, detectives, and executives had them made. So did the other side. Clyde Barrow was carrying a Fit Special built on a Colt Army from 1924 when he was killed. In 1930, a man could hand a revolver to a gunsmith, have it reshaped to his taste, and file nothing with anybody. Number 19. The Remington Model 11. America's first successful semi-automatic shotgun, built under license from John Browning's Auto 5 design, and the first repeater here that did not need a hand on the slide. In riot configuration, with the barrel cut back, it was the close-range answer inside an armored car. It was also, notoriously, a favorite on the criminal side. The cut-down Model 11 is one of the guns that put the phrase sawed-off shotgun into the American vocabulary, and the length of that cut is precisely what Congress measured 4 years later. Number 18. The Winchester Model 12 riot gun. Introduced in 1918, 12-gauge only, 20-inch cylinder bore barrel, no heat shield, and no bayonet lug. Winchester's own advertising did not bother being coy about the customer. The company named them directly: police departments, express messengers, sheriffs, and railroad guards. More than 2 million Model 12s were built across half a century, and the riot version stayed in service from the First World War into Vietnam. The manufacturer wrote the payroll guard into the ad copy years before any legislature wrote him into a statute. Step back and look at what these guns were riding in. The armored car of the 1920s was not a purpose-built vehicle. Brinks started by bolting steel plate onto the lower body panels of converted buses, then added bullet-resistant glass, and that was the state of the art. A payroll run meant a crew in the truck and a second car of guards behind it. On March 11, 1927, south of Pittsburgh, Paul Jaworski's Flathead Gang buried charges under Bethel Road, ran the wires to a battery hidden in a hollow stump, and waited for a Pittsburgh Terminal Coal Company payroll. Both vehicles were lifted off the road. The armor was irrelevant. Everything on this list exists because sooner or later the man inside has to open the door himself. Number 17. The Winchester Model 1897 riot gun. Browning's exposed hammer pump action in the 20-inch configuration, and over 1 million Model 97s were built between 1897 and 1957. The riot version's history is exactly the men on this list. Messengers of the American Express Company were armed with it. Express companies protecting valuable shipments bought it by the crate. One example made in 1924 served with the Pasadena Police. It rode payroll runs for a full generation before anyone in Washington thought to ask how short a shotgun barrel ought to be allowed to get. Number 16. The Marbles Game Getter. Made in Gladstone, Michigan, a folding stock over-under with a 22 rimfire barrel on top and a 410 shotgun barrel underneath, offered with 12-inch, 15-inch, and 18-inch barrels. It was sold to campers and outdoorsmen, and ended up in a great many vehicles for reasons the catalog never printed. Then 1934 arrived. The 12-inch and 15-inch versions were discontinued for sale in the United States. Canada kept buying the short ones until 1955. The statute did not ban it. The statute made it not worth building. Number 15. The Harrington and Richardson Handygun. Introduced in 1924, a single-barrel break-action shotgun cut down into a pistol. Pistol grip, 8-inch barrel, 410 and 28 gauge, with a 12-inch version made to stay legal in states that already had length restrictions. In 1931, the company tried to reinvent it as a target pistol. In 1933, they added a wire stock. Neither saved it. The National Firearms Act reclassified it, and production stopped. Congress discussed guns of this exact type by name in the hearings. That is how specifically the door closed. Number 14. The Federal Gas Billy. Federal Laboratories of Pittsburgh took the most ordinary object in American policing and built a tear gas weapon into it. Reuben B. Lawrence of Bellevue, Pennsylvania, filed the patent in December 1922 for a hand weapon that sprayed incapacitating gas. A company catalog from around 1933 showed an officer using one against what the caption called a half-dozen assailants. For a messenger crossing a sidewalk with a satchel, that was 2 tools in one hand. And because it was not a firearm in any statute, nobody had to write him an exemption for it. Number 13. The Federal Laboratories gas riot gun. A single-shot, smooth-bore, breech-loading launcher built in the 1930s to throw 37mm tear gas grenades. Between 1922 and the 1930s, Federal Laboratories became one of the leading producers of chemical munitions in the country, selling to police, prisons, and the private protection industry. Here is the part that says everything about this list. The gas gun was never legally a firearm at all, and it is the only weapon in this entire countdown still in production in recognizable form today. Number 12. The tear gas vault system. Federal Laboratories developed and patented a robbery prevention device disguised as ordinary light bulbs. Installed in a bank vault ceiling, they looked like lighting. Triggered by a break-in, they flooded the room with gas and left the men inside standing blind on money they could no longer see. It is the only weapon on this countdown that needed no man to carry it, no license to own it, and no exemption in any statute in America. It simply waited, and it never once had to justify itself to a legislature. Number 11. The Protective Garment Corporation vest. In 1923, W.H. Murphy of the Protective Garment Corporation of New York demonstrated his product to Washington police at city headquarters by putting the vest on, standing still, and having his assistant shoot him. The photographs survive. Early soft vests were built from layered cotton padding and cloth and could absorb most common handgun rounds of the day, traveling up to roughly 1,000 feet per second. And notice what is missing from the record. No legislature in America ever wrote a line about who could wear one. The 1920s and 1930s were the decade America decided that gas was civilized. Coming out of the First World War, tear gas was marketed as the humane weapon, the thing that stopped a man without killing him. And between 1922 and the 1930s, Federal Laboratories of Pittsburgh built an entire industry on that premise. They sold to police departments, they sold to prison systems, they sold to banks and to armored car operators, and they sold, aggressively, to companies looking to break strikes, which is where the reckoning eventually came, because a weapon marketed as harmless gets used far more freely than one that is not. That is the quiet lesson in the middle of this list. The things nobody bothers to legislate are the things that spread fastest. Number 10. The Wisbrod Armored Vest. Elliot Wisbrod of Alameda, California, built body armor for law enforcement and private guards from the 1920s onward, and the extraordinary thing about his product is the label. Wisbrod printed on the tag exactly what the vest was rated to stop, listing the specific loads and their velocities, including the .45 caliber round fired from a Thompson submachine gun. Read that label and you are reading a threat assessment. You are reading what a man in 1930 expected to be shot with, and no statute governed a single one of them. Number 9. Bullet-resistant glass and bolted steel plate. Call it a weapon, because in 1929, that is exactly how it was procured. In March of that year, Pittsburgh police took delivery of new patrol cars fitted with bulletproof glass. By June, the Detective Bureau had permission to buy a high-powered, partly armored automobile, and the specification called for compartments built in for riot guns and tear gas bombs. The vehicle was not transport for the weapons. The vehicle was one of them, and in no statute anywhere was a sheet of hardened glass a firearm. Number 8. The Thompson Model 1927 Semi-Automatic Carbine. A genuine curiosity, and it exists for a purely legal reason. Auto Ordnance took Model 1921 machine guns off the shelf, modified them to fire one shot per pull of the trigger, and remarked the receivers 1927. There was no production line. Guns were converted one at a time as ordered. Only about 100 to 150 were sold, mostly to police and prison agencies that wanted the presence of a Thompson without the machine gun. An entire product built to stand on the correct side of a line that did not federally exist yet. Number 7. The Winchester Model 1907 in 351 self-loading. 58,733 were built between 1907 and 1957. Semi-automatic detachable box magazines. and in its early years, the most expensive rifle in the Winchester catalog. It became a standard arm for police departments, prison guards, railway security, and bank protection. Charles Askins Jr. wrote that the ideally armed three-man squad carried two .351 Winchester autoloaders and a repeating shotgun, sold across a counter to anyone with the money, and not one legislature had a word to say about it. Number 6. The Remington Model 8 and the Model 81 Special Police. Designed by John Browning, the Model 8 was the first genuinely reliable, high-powered, self-loading rifle on the American market. Its factory magazine held 5 rounds, fixed in place, so in the 1920s, the Peace Officer Equipment Company of St. Joseph, Missouri, sold a conversion replacing it with detachable 5, 10, and 15-round magazines. Remington licensed the idea in 1936 and offered it as the Special Police. The Los Angeles County Sheriff was the largest customer, ordering 200. The aftermarket outran the law by a decade. Everything in the top 5 exists because of one engineering failure. By 1930, the standard American police cartridge, the .38 Special, pushing a 158-grain bullet at around 755 feet per second, could not be relied on to punch through the heavy steel body of an automobile. And the soft vests circulating on both sides of the law would absorb most common handgun rounds of the era. So the guard's problem in 1930 was not that he was outnumbered. It was that his sidearm could be defeated by a car door and a jacket. What follows is the industry's answer. 4 cartridges and 1 machine gun, and every one of them was legal in his hands because somebody in a state capital had written it down. Number 5. The Smith & Wesson 38-44 Heavy Duty, introduced on April 1, 1930. And the name is the design philosophy. Smith & Wesson took its large N frame, the heavy 44-sized frame dating back to 1908, and chambered it for the .38 Special. The frame was the reason the cartridge could be loaded far hotter than any ordinary .38 would survive. A standard .38 Special of the day pushed 158 grains at roughly 755 feet per second. The .38-44 loads ran about 300 feet per second faster, and some used a metal-piercing bullet at around 1,125 feet per second, easily capable of penetrating the automobile bodies and body armor of that era. It stayed in production from 1930 to 1941, and again from 1946 to 1966. A revolver, legally speaking, and therefore exempt from everything that came afterward. The most consequential handgun of the whole era needed no stamp at all. Number 4. The Smith & Wesson Registered Magnum. In 1935, Smith & Wesson took the .38-44 outdoorsman platform, heat-treated the cylinder, and chambered it for a lengthened case Winchester had developed so that it could not be loaded into an older .38 Special revolver. They called it the .357 Magnum, and advertised it as the most powerful handgun in the world. Everyone was hand-built. The factory cited it in with the ammunition you specified, and you received a registration certificate in your name and a number stamped inside the frame, separate from the serial number. Roughly 5,400 were made between 1935 and 1939. The price at launch was $60, in the middle of the Great Depression, more than many of the men on that payroll run earned in a month. J. Edgar Hoover received the first one on April 8, 1935, and it required no exemption, no permit, and no tax stamp from anyone. Number 3. The Colt Super 38. Released in January 1929, a 130-grain bullet leaving the muzzle at roughly 1,300 feet per second. And here is where this list earns your trust instead of asking for it. The story everybody tells is that Colt built it to give lawmen something that would punch through car doors and steel plate vests. Elmer Keith wrote it that way in Six Guns. That account has been repeated for 90 years. But go back to what Colt printed. Colt's own advertising in 1929 and the early 1930s promoted the Super 38 for big game hunting and target shooting. As late as 1940, Colt was still marketing it to the big game hunter, with no mention of police work. What is documented is this. After federal agents received expanded firearms authority in 1934, the Bureau did acquire Super 38 government models, valued alongside the 357 for penetrating car bodies and steel plate vests. Both things are true. The capability was real. The origin story is bigger than the record. Number 2. The Colt Monitor. Colt held the sales rights to Browning's automatic rifle across the Americas, and in 1931 introduced the R80, the law enforcement version, and called it the Monitor. Shortened and lightened 18-inch barrel, a pistol grip, a large cuts compensator at the muzzle, no bipod. It was built for a specific complaint. Police agencies had found that the Thompson, firing a pistol cartridge, could not reliably get through the heavy steel panels of large automobiles. The 30-06 had no such difficulty. In 1933, it was formally designated the Bureau's official fighting rifle. And then the numbers. Fewer than 125 monitors were ever built. The Bureau bought about 90. Roughly 20 more went to other agencies, and that was the entire market. The reason is on the price tag. $300 in 1931 at the bottom of the Depression for one rifle. The exemption was standing wide open. Almost nobody could afford to walk through it. Number 1. The Thompson submachine gun. Understand how ordinary it was to buy one. Auto Ordnance sold the Thompson through every legal outlet it could find. Mail order, the local hardware store, the sporting goods counter. In 1926, Postmaster General Harry New bought 250 of them to protect mail on trains and trucks. Then the states began to move. This is the sentence this countdown has been walking toward. Illinois, 1931. An act to regulate the sale, possession, and transportation of machine guns. In its exceptions, this: guards or messengers employed by common carriers, banks and trust companies, and payroll guards or messengers may possess and carry machine guns while actually employed in the shipment, transportation, delivery, or guarding of any money, treasure, bullion, bonds, or other thing of value. Louisiana wrote the same carve-out in 1932. The Uniform Machine Gun Act of that year spread the template, and South Dakota adopted it word for word in 1933. America banned the machine gun, and in the same breath, in writing, it named the payroll guard as the one man who could keep his. Go back to that Illinois statute we started with. The exemption did not disappear in 1934. What disappeared was everything around it. The National Firearms Act set the transfer tax at $200, roughly the price of a machine gun, set there precisely to discourage the trade. It killed the handy-gun. It ended domestic sales of the short game getter. It buried every cut-down shotgun in every armored car in the country. The Monitor died of its own price tag. The payroll guard was the exemption America wrote on purpose, and then America priced him out of his own exemption. He was left with what he started with in 1917, a short shotgun within reach and a door he still had to open himself. Which one would you want in that cab on a coal country payroll run in 1929? Tell me in the comments. And subscribe, because the next list goes deeper.